Greetings, this is Cindy Kennedy, and I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the podcast series at www.livingwithlyme.us. This will keep you up to date on all our new releases. Living with Lyme podcast guests may be discussing very controversial topics. The information contained in these podcasts are from the guests' personal experiences and are their own opinions. These podcasts are intended for information. The opinions expressed are solely the guest's own. Please discuss treatment options with your personal healthcare providers before changing or adding treatments. Enjoy the podcast.
Living with Lyme is brought to you in part by Doctor-Inspired Formulations, a supplement company offering products such as liposomal artemisinin, liposomal oregano oil, and mimosa pudica. Patients can purchase without a prescription, and practitioners can open a wholesale account and carry the products in their office. To learn more, visit DoctorInspiredFormulations.com. That's DoctorInspiredFormulations.com. We'd also like to thank Hopkinton Drug. Many people have unique healthcare needs that mass-produced pharmaceutical medications just can't meet. That's why more people turn to Hopkinton Drug, a locally based compounding and wellness pharmacy. Whether it's Lyme disease, mold illness, thyroid, hormone replacement therapy, pediatrics, or dermatology, Hopkinton Drug's specially trained and licensed pharmacists can create customized compounded medications to meet your specific needs. Shipping is available nationwide. Go to rxandhealth.com. That's rxandhealth.com. Or call 800-439-4441. Hopkinton Drug, compounds with care.
Hi, everybody. This is Cindy Kennedy, and today I'm talking with Dr. Terry Wahls. This is going to be a phenomenal interview because we really are finding that someone who has really suffered and found her way out of illness is going to help you all. Dr. Terry Wahls is an Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner and a clinical professor of medicine at the University of Iowa, where she conducts clinical trials. She had the honor of being awarded the Institute of Functional Medicine's Linus Pauling Award for her contributions in research, clinical care, and patient advocacy. I would like to introduce to all of you Dr. Terry Wahls. How are you doing today?
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
This is awesome. How are you feeling?
Well, actually, today I have a cough and a sore throat, so that's been going through my family. But other than my recent respiratory illness, I've been doing great, biking to work, doing a strength training program, taking my dog on hikes. So life is good. Life is
my goodness. That's incredible. Your story is incredible. And many people have actually been talking about you on some of the support groups on Facebook. And I mentioned you, and everybody was like, oh my God, are you following her protocol? Oh my God, are you doing her diet? And I said, variably I am, but you guys are going to have to listen and wait for her podcast to come up. It's kind of a little tease, but that's okay, absolutely. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for those that don't know, give me a little bit of background on what happened to you. I mean, you're a physician, and a couple things that happen with us medical care people is we almost try to talk ourselves out of what's going on. We kind of say, this can't really be happening. And I don't know if that happened to you or you were pronto on it.
Oh, no. So in 2000, I started having some problems with my left leg, and I ultimately went to see a physician when my spouse got concerned enough. I was not going to do it, but she was very insistent. So I got evaluated with spinal tap, brain and spinal cord MRIs, nerve conduction velocities, visual conduction velocities as well. And so these are all tests of the structure of my brain and spinal cord, and then functional tests of how my sensory organs worked and how my motor systems worked. And the conclusion was that I had relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, that about 13 years earlier I'd had an episode of dim vision of my left eye, and that was probably optic neuritis. And I had evidence of optic neuritis in both eyes. And so being a academic internal medicine physician, I knew I wanted to treat my disease aggressively. and I wanted to see the best people in the country that were doing clinical research. And so in the Midwest, that was really the Cleveland Clinic. So I saw their best people, took the newest drugs. I gradually went downhill. Over the next 2 years, I had just one episode of weakness involving my right arm. So if I'd been in a clinical trial, that would have been a huge success. But unfortunately, I was continuing to decline. My physicians told me about the work of Lauren Cordain. So I read his papers, his books, and decided after a lot of prayer and meditation to go back to eating meat, because I'd been a vegetarian for 20 years. And I continued to decline. The next year, I needed a tilt-recline wheelchair. And then my physicians told me I was secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. They recommended mitoxantrone. I did several cycles of that. I continued to decline. And then my physicians recommended tizabri, which is a very potent biologic. I did that several cycles, and I continued to decline. And then I was placed on Cellcept. And at that point, it seemed to me that the best conventional medicine, taking the newest drugs from the best people, was not stopping my steady decline towards a bedridden, possibly demented life. I also have trigeminal neuralgia as part of the MS. And so that was getting more and more difficult to control. I was frequently in the pain clinic. And my big fear was that would turn on these intense electrical face pains in response to any kind of light or sound or touch. That if it turned on permanently, that would just be completely incapacitating pain. So in 2007, the university and the VA have redesigned my job multiple times to allow me to keep working. But in that summer, my chief of staff told me he was assigning me to the traumatic brain injury clinic come January. I'd be part of it, multidisciplinary team. There'd be no residents. And I knew this was a job I did not have the physical strength to do. So I probably, I told my family that, I'd have to go to that clinic in January, and either I could do the work, or if I couldn't, then I'd have to finally apply for medical disability. But, God works in mysterious ways. So it was that summer that I discovered electrical stimulation of muscles, and I got my physical therapist to add that to my program. And then I had been experimenting on myself with supplement cocktails for my mitochondria, which had helped my fatigue somewhat. But that summer, I also, in 2007, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine and took their course on neuroprotection, and had a longer list of supplements and some new insights. And then, later in the fall, I had a really big aha moment. Like, I should take this list of supplements and say, like, okay, these are the key nutrients. Where are they in the food supply? And if I did that, I would probably pick up more nutrients that haven't even been named or described for the brain. That would be very helpful. So again, more research, trying to figure out where this list of about 20 nutrients were in the food supply. And then I reorganized. I still followed the paleo diet because I had already taken out grain, legumes, and dairy since basically 2004, or actually 2002 rather. But now I emphasized, paid a lot more attention to what to eat. So I had this huge change in my diet, a little less meat, many more vegetables, and a particular pattern of vegetables and what I was eating. And then January comes and I go off to the traumatic brain injury clinic. The first week I'm just watching. So that's pretty easy. I should be able to do that. The second week, I start seeing the patients into my stuff. I have to stand up, examine them, sit back down, do my notes. And I was quite surprised. By the end of that week, I was doing okay. And I realized that my energy was improving. My mental clarity was improving. And in 3 months, I started walking again with a cane. And in 6 months, I'm walking throughout the hospital without a cane. And at 9 months, I get on my bike, which I hadn't biked probably for six years. And I pedal around the block. My kids are crying. I'm crying. My wife's crying. And that's the moment where I realized the current understanding of progressive MS is incomplete. That who knows how much recovery might be possible. So this has really changed my understanding of disease and health, the way I practice medicine, and of course it would ultimately change the research that I do.
That's incredible, because what happened to all the doctors that were treating you when you kept backing off or stopping trials?
So what happened? I'm recovering. I'm just dramatically better. And I make an appointment with my neurologist. He's stunned and surprised. And I tell him that I want to taper off the Cellcept. And he agreed, said, I think you're right.
Okay.
So we tapered that over several weeks, and with the agreement that, I'll have close follow-up, and if I have another indication of decline, that I'd reevaluate what to do. But certainly he's been very impressed. He joined my clinical research team, and then when he retired, the new MS specialist is now part of our research team.
Oh my goodness, that's great. And I'm wondering, sometimes they look at you and they say you're crazy. This is never going to work. Excuse me. But you didn't get that pushback, right?
Well, no. I worked with my primary care as I was designing my vitamin and supplement cocktail for my mitochondria. And I shared with her the scientific papers about what I was doing and why. She would check for supplement interactions with what else I was taking and say, yep, no, it looks fine. And as she could see that, I was getting this sort of complicated supplement cocktail, but my fatigue was steadily reducing. And so she was very supportive. And the neurologist was like, well, okay. So it's one of the reasons I advise people to work primarily with their primary care doc in terms of trying to figure out, is there a contraindication with a supplement and the medication you're on? And do we have to make adjustments on the diet because of your underlying health issues? Right.
And there are specific programs that you can actually purchase as software. The general one that most medical people use, like Hippocrates, there are additional portions of that, or I know that there's a brand new one that I'm using, and I know it's my daughter actually found it. She and I are in practice together. She's a dietitian and I'm a nurse practitioner.
Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
So our combination, I think, is a great combination because nutrition. So
nutrition is everything. Absolutely.
It is. What did Hippocrates say? Let nutrition be thy medicine, and thy medicine be your nutrition, or food. Yes. And that's what it's all about. Now, because most of the people that are listening are Lyme sufferers, and they'd say, Cindy Kennedy, you didn't ask her the most important question. And the question is, were you screened for Lyme?
To be honest, I don't know. I know that I had many tests at the initial evaluation.
Okay.
So I may well have been. And I expect likely I was, given that I was up in Marshfield, Wisconsin, central Wisconsin, which certainly would have been an endemic area where there is a lot of Lyme.
Right. No matter what it was, whether Lyme contributed to your MS or, some other virus, or this is autoimmune, we don't always know. The fact that you got better is really the bottom line.
So actually, I'll take it even further because so many people say, progressive MS doesn't improve like that. Clearly, your physicians must have been made a mistake in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Cleveland Clinic because you can't recover. It's like, okay, maybe they were. If they were, the next important question is, can other people do my intervention, and what happens to them?
Okay.
Does prospectively it help other people?
Right. So
that's far more important than the question of my own really amazing and what feels to me like a miraculous story. The bigger question is, I'm a skeptic. I'm a physician. I'm a scientist. So it's like, okay, can other people do this? And if they do, what happens? So we have done that, and we've implemented our protocol. in 20 individuals with progressive MS. So you would anticipate that they would continue to decline, get worse memory problems, worse fatigue, worse walking ability. And what we saw was people could implement it.
Yeah.
So that was not a problem. And people who were overweight lost weight without being hungry. The people who were skinny stayed skinny but didn't become underweight. So people got to a healthy weight. That was the big side. That's the big side effect.
It's almost like food is an adaptogen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and so people could do it. There was no serious harms. And we saw a dramatic improvement in quality of life for the group, a dramatic reduction in fatigue for the group, a clinically significant reduction in anxiety, in depression, clinically significant improvement in thinking ability, and half of our individuals had clinically meaningful improvement in walking function. Now, some folks continued to decline. Some folks did stay stable. There is no other treatment that has been this effective in progressive MS at improving gait.
That's fabulous. That's
really
fabulous.
Quite remarkable. Now, what is a fair criticism is this is not a randomized study. So this is a single-arm, open-label study. This is what you do for the first safety studies whenever you have a new intervention. So you start with a single-arm safety study. Then the next thing you do is a randomized study. And we just used diet. We did a randomized waitlist control. So you got the diet for 12 weeks, or you had to wait for 12 weeks, and then you got the diet. And again, we saw in the intervention group a marked reduction in anxiety, fatigue, better mood, better walking function as well, better hand function as well. And now, then there's another study that we've done randomized with comparing my original diet, the ketogenic diet, and waitlist control. And that paper is under review. Hopefully that will come out soon. Now our current study is comparing the SWANK diet, which is low saturated fat diet, and the Wahls diet to those folks. Again, we are looking at motor function, thinking function, visual function, and measures of diet quality. So we'll be recruiting through the month of April, and then we'll be following folks along. And we anticipate doing our data analysis in starting January of 2020. So sometime in 2020, we'll be presenting our data. We're very, very excited about that.
Right. I mean, for people that are listening and don't understand the difference in research, when you have a single arm, you're actually utilizing the treatment portion versus when you do double-blind studies, people are not sure of what they're getting, and there is that placebo factor.
Yes.
Obviously, when you've got a full plate of vegetables, you're eating the full plate of vegetables.
Yes.
You can't deny that. Do you go by the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15?
Well, we certainly give people that information and absolutely encourage them to use it, for sure.
Okay. You talked about mitochondria, and you and I know what that is, and that every cell in our body has that. Tell me, your TED Talk was amazing. And by the way, congratulations that you used to do Taekwondo.
Yes, I'm a kick up sort of girl.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But talk about your information on mitochondria and feeding those for especially your energy level. Oh, and especially about assisting with the shrinking brain, which none of us want.
So absolutely. So about 1.5 billion years ago, the oxygen rose in the atmosphere, and that killed off about 95% of all life forms. Fortunately for us, through the evolution, the spontaneous mutations that occur, the Krebs cycle developed in a bacteria that allowed it to utilize oxygen very effectively to generate more ATP or energy for the cell. This ancient bacteria was engulfed by a bigger bacteria, and they developed a very happy symbiotic relationship. And so this bacteria thrived and was able to, over time, again through spontaneous mutations, develop into multicellular organisms and ultimately a variety of animals, which about 200 million years ago, the mammals emerged, and then of course eventually the primates, and about 6 million years ago we separated from the primates. Now in all of our cells, we have these ancient bacteria that we all got about 1.5 billion years ago that help us run the chemistry of life. And it helps every organ in my body to be able to specialize. So I can develop brain tissue, muscle tissue, glands, digestive tissue, nervous tissue that do the various jobs that need to happen for my body to work and move around, gather food, and function, reproduce. So all of those functions are dependent on those tiny early bacteria that are mitochondria. And these mitochondria generate the energy for that cell so it can do its specialized work.
Now, when you talk about the shrinking brain, what's actually happening?
So we're beginning to understand that the mitochondria are very much involved in signaling to the cell that it's time to shut down, die, and it's called senescence. When that occurs in the brain, it's called apoptosis, and you lose brain cells, and the brain shrinks. The connections get pruned that aren't being used, and so this occurs with aging. It is accelerated with certain types of chronic disease, and these neurodegenerative diseases like multiple sclerosis, cognitive decline, Parkinson's, have accelerated brain aging and shrinking of the brain. We also think that one of the signals that is very, very important is the mitochondria is not keeping up with the task it needs to do, and it sends this signal to die prematurely. So I'll get that back to you.
That's so intricate. What about variances, SNPs and people who have APOE?
So, we're getting to understand more and more about our genetic heritage. I am so old that I can remember when we were so excited in medical school about the Human Genome Project that we're finally sequencing the human genes. And when that happened, we'd understand chronic disease and we'd be able to just fix everything. We also predicted that we'd have about 100,000 genes because of all the proteins that we make. And it turns out we only have about 25,000, so that was terribly confusing. And then furthermore, it turns out that there's a lot of variation called single nucleotide polymorphisms, where there's been a random mutation of one gene base for another. And of course, that makes that enzyme no different, or maybe more effective, or maybe less effective. And that has consequences for how effective we are as an organism in terms of my ability to reproduce. We realize now it's a very complicated interaction between the genes I have and my diet, all my lifetime exposures, my stress management techniques, my sleep, my social connectedness. All of those have a profound impact on making those genes disease-promoting or relatively inconsequential. And the other really big news is the microbiome. We have in us 100 trillion microbes, parasites, viruses, bacteria that digest your food, help make vitamins, and make minerals more available. And they make small microbial metabolites from all the digestive work that will get into our bloodstream, that will influence our immune cells, make them more irritated or less irritated, and that will go up to our blood-brain barrier and cross it and influence our mood, our thinking, our creativity, in our behaviors. We're shocked to realize that our microbes have an influence on our behavior and our moods.
Right.
and our immune cells and
Right.
our hormone balance.
Right.
So
all comes from the gut. People don't
it comes from the
realize.
gut.
Right. And as long as everybody's playing nice in the sandbox, right, we're doing all right. But when you get an overgrowth in one direction or not, you lose that symbiosis.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, if you sort of think about our evolutionary history of guts, we brought these microbes with us probably, 1.5 billion years ago when we first began to have multicellular organisms and gut. And those microbes evolved very rapidly, swapping their genes back and forth. And the microbes are passed mother to offspring through her vaginal vault. Very important. Come out through the vagina if you can.
That's right. That's right.
But the food we eat has the most profound effect on which microbes will flourish and which microbes will disappear. If you think back, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years, what were our ancestors eating? Meat, plants, eggs seasonally. There was no sugar, there was no processed food, there was no shelf-stable food. So we've radically changed what we're feeding our microbes, which changes which microbes flourish. So my advice in my clinic is try and think back to what your great-great-great-grandmother would have been able to eat.
Before I learned the importance of food and how you're utilizing your food, I don't know, it dawned on me. I practiced gynecology for about 21 years, and people would say, well, I don't know what to eat. And I would just say, I want you to eat it the way it came out of nature. You want to eat things that are not in a box. They're not in a bag. You need to cook, and you really need to take the time. And this is one of the biggest problems. On your TED Talk, when you showed the picture of a particular American family and what they would eat over the next week, they had pizzas, they had soda, they had box things, they did have a gallon of milk I saw there, but overwhelmingly it was the quote unquote standard American diet. And
correct.
We can't get people to understand that is going to really take away your longevity in some forms.
Absolutely, because we're feeding the wrong bacteria. We're feeding bacteria that do not support our biochemistry. And so we have big gaps in how we run the chemistry of life, which leads to a more inflamed state and accelerated aging. In my clinics, as we get people fired up about vegetables and meat, this radical food.
Do you have cheerleaders that go like this, rah rah sis boom ba, spinach?
So actually, we have a little cooking class. So
you do. That's really important.
We cook greens with them, make a green smoothie. So for the intake, when people committed to doing our program 100% for 100 days, they could come to our intake in the group classes, 2-hour intake as a group with me, and then a 2-hour intake with a cooking class with a dietitian who cooks greens, makes a green smoothie, and helps them reimagine their meals. And a lot of it is helping them reimagine breakfast and to reimagine meals on the go.
Right.
We do a lot of conversation about crock pots, instant pots, so you could prepare your meal in the morning and come home and it's done for you.
Exactly. And my daughter and I are a practice called Pursue Wellness, and we recently got a little gift from one of our sponsors, and they gave us an instant pot to actually give away. And
excellent.
It was really great. And I actually talked to the person today who did win it, and she's you should see a doctor about that.
Yes.
So, we're talking a lot about paleo, and we're talking about the amount of fruits and vegetables we get. And I thought maybe I should count what I took in yesterday just so you would know what kind of person I was. And I got about 3 good platefuls. And I know that's probably not enough. I mean, it's a good start.
Well, it depends on the size. I tell folks, the goal is 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of cabbage, onion, mushroom family, so that's the sulfur group, and 3 cups of deeply pigmented all the way through, like beets, carrots, berries. And then if you're eating meat, 2 palm-sized servings of meat.
And you're talking protein meat. You're not just talking red meat. You're talking chicken and fish.
I'm talking wide varieties. I just want people to have lamb, pork, beef, bison, chicken, duck, fish, and I want them to have a wide variety of plants as well. The goal is 200 different plant species, and the goal with the meat species is wide variety. And then, I certainly do recognize that there are vegetarian and vegans who are going to remain that way because of their spiritual beliefs, and so we work with them to what their strategies will be to get sufficient protein.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Botanical medicines are an important part of the integrative Lyme disease program. Biocidin from Biobotanical Research is a professional strength broad-based program that has been extensively researched for effectiveness as nutritional support in Lyme and co-infections. Ask your practitioner about Biocidin LSF and visit biocidin.com. Master Supplements specializes in probiotic enzymes and fiber that support digestion. Their products provide results that you can feel working within 60 days or a money-back guarantee. Their staff is available to help you decide which products and programs are right for you. Visit master-supplements.com or call 800-926-2961 for more info.
So thinking about different protein sources, is there a lot of difference between, say, eggs versus meat?
Yes, eggs are very inflammatory. So the yolk can be good for you, but the white is often a source of inflammation. So I ask people to remove gluten, dairy, and eggs 100% for 100 days. And then if they want to test eggs back, to have the yolk first, see how well they do with that, and then they can try the whole eggs.
Okay.
And they may do okay, but until you take it out for 100 days, you don't know if it's part of the problem.
Right. And, when people are checking, in their practice, a food sensitivity type of test, it's realistic that the majority of what you've recently been eating, you're going to find the antibodies to, if that gut is not sufficiently held together tightly. Yeah. And so that's not really necessarily an exact food sensitivity, correct?
Correct. I much prefer that people go through the 100 days with the gluten, dairy, eggs. And then if we haven't gotten the results that we want, we can either consider an elimination diet or food sensitivity testing.
Right.
It'll depend on the circumstances.
Right. And you've already done a good majority of the things that you really should eliminate to notice if there's a big difference. Now, when you're talking about all your vegetables and you're talking about your colors, you're talking about your green leafies, what are we getting with vitamins and minerals? What are we getting in those?
Sure. So in the greens, a lot of carotenoids, magnesium, vitamin K. The vitamin K is particularly metabolized by the bacteria in the gut to K2-MK7. You absorb it in the ileum, goes to the liver, metabolized further to K2-MK4. The vitamin K2 helps mineralize, get the calcium to your teeth and your bones, helps you dissolve the ectopic calcium. And now there's more research showing that it's very important in the brain in making myelin. So very important nutrient.
Right. And the myelin, for everybody that's listening, it's that coating. It's what goes over your nerves to transmit signals, right? Is there a better way to describe that?
That is perfect.
Okay. And this is what happens when people are having testing. They're noting pockets that are missing the myelin.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
And you can repair myelin. We have to stop the destructive process. That's why it's so important to address the food sensitivities, improve the sleep situation, improve the stress level situation. So you have to stop the destruction.
So,
and then you have to provide the nutrients so the body could be more effective at repair. And that's, we really worked hard at designing the Wahls diet to improve the nutrition for the brain to do the repair work.
now I know in general you really need a lot of nutrition. I think the nutrition supports the nutrition that is really, supporting the microbiome, and some do certain parts and some do others. But when we're talking about regeneration of the myelin, is it a combination, or is it the utilization of maybe fatty acids, your fish oils?
So certainly having grass-fed meat, wild fish, fish oil, and some omega-6, as in nuts and seeds, along with plenty of vitamin K2, exercise, cognitive training, without overdoing it, sends the signals to the brain to activate the stem cells, what they're called progenitor cells, that begin the work of repairing that myelin and helping the brain make new connections to perhaps bypass old lesions and scar. The brain is far more resilient, far more plastic than we realized, that there's evidence that we can continue to grow new brain tissue to repair old damage. And in fact, there's evidence that we still have stem cells, even in my 60s, that we'll have a certain amount of stem cells. My stem cells, yes, they do slowly decline with age. I can either have a diet and lifestyle that supports maintaining healthy stem cells, so I'm in much better shape to repair what's breaking down, or I can eat a lot of sugar, have a little sleep and a high stress, and I accelerate the aging of my stem cells, and it's much harder to repair myself.
Yeah, and stem cells are the absolute nitty-gritty of what we're composed of. And your stem cells are so smart that if you took some, you do a blood draw, you've got your stem cells, and if you put that in your knee, it can help rebuild the cartilage.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's what's so cool about it. Did you ever eat a standard American diet for yourself?
I'm sure growing up on the farm, you
had an advantage. Yeah.
But we still ate, our vegetables from our garden, animals that we raised. And then I decided to become a vegetarian in college. I quit eating meat. I ate legumes and grains. I still had some dairy. I was still having eggs. And I was a devout vegetarian for about 20 years. And so if people look at that, because of all the legumes and grains, I had certainly a high fiber diet. And people would have thought that would have been an exemplary diet. When I was diagnosed with MS, I went low fat. Again, people would have thought of that as an exemplary diet. So I was never into fast food. I was never into the white flour and sugars. So I probably never really had a standard American diet. People would likely have thought my diet quality growing up on the farm was better than the average American. And then when I became a vegetarian, better than the average American.
Isn't that interesting?
And then I went on a low fat diet version of the vegetarian diet and continued to decline. So I adopted the Paleo diet, and I continued to decline. I mean, because clearly I had a huge disease burden, probably a huge toxin load burden. I may have had microbial contributions, who knows? But it was when in the fall of 2007, I added e-stim to my workouts. because I'd been working out the whole time forever. Because I was a former
What's
athlete.
that? Describe that. I'm not actually familiar with e-stim.
So e-stim is electrical stimulation of muscles. It's something athletes have done for probably a couple of decades to speed recovery from injury, and to grow more muscles for bodybuilding competitions.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Some early rehab folks were using it for stroke, to help that recovery. I convinced my physical therapist to give me a test session. It hurt like hell. But at the end, I just felt totally invigorated. And so we did it in clinic for several weeks. And then he helped me get a home device. And I began doing e-stim as part of my workout. So I think that accelerated my recovery because my PT was an athletic trainer, physical therapist. And he saw, and he knew that I was a former athlete, so he treated me like an athlete.
Did it ever stop hurting?
Yes.
The more you did it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So that's important.
But also tell you that, remember I'm the black belt sort of intense kind of person, so
yeah.
I kept increasing the intensity of the current because I didn't know what to expect. I was going to have to give the device back. I wanted, I didn't want to leave any effort on the table, so I pushed it
there. So
absolutely.
you just said prior to the e-stim, you talked about toxic burden. How do we get away from toxic burden? It's just everywhere now.
And we have to recognize that our chemist friends have made these discoveries and inventions that have been utilized in industrial processes, in building processes, in agricultural processes, that have made all those processes more efficient, which improves the quality of life. And so that's why they've become so pervasive. The indoor air quality has changed because we've made our houses and buildings much more tight to try and conserve energy. And now the off-gassing from the various building materials accumulate in interior spaces. In the 60s and 70s, there was very little regulation of industry. And so our rivers, our lakes, our air were very poor quality. And President Nixon, actually did some really good things. One of them was establishing the Environmental Protection Agency with the goal of cleaning up our rivers, because we had rivers that were burning, and the quality of the air was terrible. The quality of water was very, very poor. So these regulations that were burdensome to industry somewhat did help improve the quality of air and water and our food. And so that some of these lakes and rivers that were dead, no fish, were unsafe to bathe in, walk in, wade in, are now fine. Although I do think we have to worry that with the changes in the EPA and decreased government regulation of industry emissions, we may lose ground.
Yeah, well, we have made some headway. One of the things that really bothers me is I'm writing a bit about plastics and the different, no one tips a bottle upside down and looks at that triangle. No one understands what those numbers mean. And I remember getting something from the city or the town saying, okay, we'll accept for recycling numbers 1 through 7. Well, nothing ever dawned on me that has to do with what it's particularly made from. And that to me, you go out and you say, I want to buy, my water, maybe some other source of liquid, but you want to buy it in glass. Well, that's sometimes hard to do. Even Perrier comes in plastic. And we actually bought a case. We were at Costco. Yay. Now I'm going to have all of this. And I got it home and I said, oh my God, Joe, that's in plastic. And he's like, okay, put it back in the car. It's going back. And, now we realize that several tons of our plastic, we don't have the capability of recycling it. It actually goes overseas, and we lose control of it over there. But are we actually utilizing that material again?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's frightening. That's hard to believe. And back in the day when I was younger, everything was primarily in glass, and it was thought that, safety's sake, if it falls off the shelf, we move it into plastic, we can mold it and shape it, we can put it into any configuration that we want, and it's safer. It's not gonna shard in a million pieces. And I don't know how much, other than the aesthetic quality that you can get out of plastics, whatever happened that changed it from glass to plastic.
No doubt it was cost driven.
Yeah, true. I think that's probably true. You mentioned in one of your talks about adequate iodine. Is there a way in diet to get adequate iodine, and what is that doing for us? You think iodine, thyroid?
So iodine's in seaweed, and so seaweed's usually been a very important traditional food. People would travel to the sea to collect it or trade to obtain it. And our coastal communities have seaweed as part of their diet. So that's one of the reasons I encourage people to begin adding seaweed into their diet to increase their access to trace minerals. I also recommend using sea salt in addition to that to have a more robust mineral consumption. Right, because not all salt is created equal.
No. My daughter actually wrote a blog on it's called What's Shaken, and we actually investigated what salt has the highest mineral qualities, because your minerals are critical. It's critical for your cells, and we're an entire groupings of frequencies. All organs, all different cells, part of us are all frequencies, and we need to balance that. And people who have one type of diet, like let's talk about lectins, people who are super anti-lectin, or they're consistently on paleo, I don't know how that, I don't know the research on it truly, but I in my mind and instinctively, I don't know how good that actually is for you, because you're missing some key ingredients.
Well, for whatever diet, people have to keep in mind that unless you're thoughtful about how you've organized it, it still creates some insufficiencies. I'm probably the only author who writes diet books, who also does research, who then tests the dietary quality of the diets that they're proposing. We've done that. I published that in my book, The Wahls Protocol. We've done it as a research paper now, which was just published in Nutrients. And we're doing that assessment for all of our studies. So we know that if you follow the protocol as I've outlined it, you don't have deficiencies. We certainly also know that depending on your selections, you can do a keto diet and develop numerous mineral and vitamin deficiencies. You can do a paleo diet and not have enough fiber. You can do a vegetarian diet and have other insufficiencies. So unless you have someone who helps you organize your eating pattern more clearly, you can create a variety of imbalances that will lead to not optimal results. That'll compromise your health.
On top of your incredible and impeccable food intake, do you need or take any supplements yourself?
Yeah, I've done a variety of testing. So I monitor my vitamin D level, I monitor my homocysteine, and I monitor some other nutrients as well to optimize things. I think for the general public, simple tests that you could get through your primary care doc, vitamin D level, a hemoglobin A1C, a random glucose, a fasting lipid, and I believe homocysteine. You could go as far as an insulin level.
Right.
With that information would give a great deal of guidance as to, do you need some additional vitamin D? Do you need some additional B vitamins? Do we have to further restrict your carbs? Are you tolerating saturated fat or not? Should we lower your saturated fat? And this is something a primary care doc could manage. I talk about this in my book and describe a variety of circumstances when I see people with those labs, how I interpret them, and what my responses would be. So
I think that's amazing. Yeah,
get a lot of info there.
Right, because we see the prescription pad come out with those levels in your cholesterol that are elevated, and no one takes the time to say, okay, let's see how we can get this diet in a better shape. And the other problem is people aren't willing to make those changes because they're just not all in. And I wish I could convince people that really this is so critical for your well-being.
So in my approach, we work a lot on motivational interviewing, self-determination, hero's journey. And so the process to get into our therapeutic lifestyle clinic was people to attend the initial orientation. I tell my story, talk about functional medicine, the mechanisms of diet, stress reduction, and exercise, the dietary intervention that we propose. And then we give people, say, okay, now you have three choices. One is say, this is too hard, I'm not ready. The other one is, well, I'm interested in working on improving my diet, but I can't make the commitment to do the program that you advise. And the third is, I'm all in. I want to go work with you. And then the people who are, they want to work a little bit, go to the dietitian and they try to improve the diet. And then the dietitian will refer them back to the group when they're ready. The people who are ready, we talk a lot about poop.
Well, I'm seeing it over your shoulder there.
Yes, we have lots of poop emojis. We have
Everybody, oh my God, you gotta poop. I asked a patient once, how often are you having a BM? And so cute, wrote, I have never had one.
Well, that's a problem.
We got a problem. No, we just didn't know what a BM was.
Yeah. And so we talk a lot about what you want your health for. And what is your personal mission statement? How does your diet support your mission of achieving your goal? We talk about your hero's journey and put it in the context of what is it that you need to learn as part of your healing journey, and what could you then bring back to your tribe, your community. And those conversations are very resonant with my vets in terms of helping them get a lot of clarity, because changing your diet, changing your lifestyle takes a fair amount of effort. I'm very happy to tell people, like, if you want to go through the work, we have spots for you in my group classes. If you're not ready, that's fine. You can work individually with a dietitian, or you can admit it, this is not the right time in your life. But if you're not fully committed, you don't get a chair at the table, because I have a 6-month waiting list. So the people who get to come in have to be firmly committed. And if they aren't committed, I'll fire them and send them to the dietitian to work individually until they're ready to be fully in.
Right. It's like quitting smoking. You really got to be ready for it. Otherwise.
Right. And it's the patient's decision. So it worked very well to have this group class, telling people what they're up for, and then they could self-select into one of those three groups. And when I first started doing that, I'd say about half the folks would come work with us. And then it didn't take long. We got up to 75% of the folks coming to work with us. And after 3 years of running my clinic, I'd say we got up to a pretty consistent 90% of the attendees who came to the group class signed up for the group therapeutic lifestyle. The National VA office noticed what we were doing. They came out to watch and learn. They let us write a grant to expand our staff. And so that clinic has grown considerably. I've since retired from the VA. That was back in 2016 that I retired. So it's 2.5 years that I've been out. But it's been very nice to watch. They continue to thrive. The clinic is growing. They're adding staff. And these concepts are spreading to other VAs.
Well, you started a base there, and you started by educating people and giving them the tools, and that's what it's all about, is kind of paying it forward. Here's my story, here's how it worked for me, and you too can benefit from this, which is really kind of amazing. What about changes in lifestyle? What type of changes did you make back when you were really, I'm sure you must have been really frightened.
When all this happens, I'll go all the way back. I used to do transcendental meditation during college. Okay. During medical school, I quit. I don't remember why. When I was diagnosed, I saw very quickly that stress made symptoms worse. I did not go back to meditating. I don't know why, but I did exercise. I'd exercised every day all of my life. That's always been a constant.
Even when you were in the wheelchair?
Absolutely. I of course, it was very limited, but I swam for the first couple of years. Then it got too weak. I couldn't swim anymore. I did some water aerobics, and then I did floor exercises. I could only do about 10 minutes. If I did longer than 10 minutes, I could not go to work.
Oh, that was your cutoff.
That was my cutoff.
Yep. Did you restart meditating since then?
So what happened the summer of 2007? I restarted meditation. I was doing the exercise ESTEM with my athletic physical therapist. I had a bunch of supplements based on what I learned and what I learned from functional medicine. And then what really changed things up was the decision to reorganize my diet in a very specific way.
Yeah, that gave you a good grounding. Anytime you have a benefit from something, it certainly provides you the emphasis that you're going in the right direction. Give me the names. I think you have a couple of books, right?
Yes. So the Wahls Protocol, A Radical New Way to Treat All Chronic Autoimmune Conditions. That's a paperback.
Yep.
And then the companion cookbook, The Wahls Protocol, Cooking for Life.
Good. I think a lot of people need some help with breakfast. So I'm hoping there's some really good information in there for breakfast.
And really, the other thing that I did in that book was I wrote it for people, assuming that you want to be able to have your meal complete in about 20 minutes, and that you want to be able to get the ingredients where you live. So I really focused on things that people in rural America should be able to get from their grocery stores. So not complicated foods.
Right, and that is important. So, before we end here, I do have to ask you, some people really create a bucket list. Sounds like you've dug into that bucket list, but what do you have in your bucket list for the next, say, 10 years?
I'm creating an epidemic of health. This concept will continue to grow. I'll have influenced the MS and autoimmune community with our research. My big goal is to have a study where we compare therapeutic lifestyle to standard drug-based disease-modifying therapy in people with clinically isolated syndrome and multiple sclerosis. I need about $500,000 to run this study. We have raised $220,000. We need, $300,000 would complete this. So I'm hoping we can find another philanthropist so I can get that study up and running.
You need a GoFundMe account. That would help, right? That would really, really help. How do people find you? Do I recall that you have some form of a support group? Or
so if you'll find us at terrywahls.com. If you go terrywahls.com/diet, we have a great one-page handout summary for our program. So terrywahls.com/diet. And if you follow me on Facebook, Terry Wahls MD, I'm at Twitter, Terry Wahls, and on Instagram, Dr. Terry Wahls. People love the Instagram because my wife Jackie does a great job of taking photos of daily life. So they see what we do when we're on the road and what we do at home. And she has me make short little videos for inspiration. So it's a tremendous resource.
Yeah,
and
you need that volume. You need that support. It takes a village.
It makes it much easier. And then Facebook, I'll talk intermittently about the research that's going on and what I see in the current public discussion. I'd
love to see more access to integrative functional health. I'd love to see insurance companies get on board and, pay for some of these really important testing that you can't necessarily get at your regular standard laboratory, associated with a hospital. A lot of the hospitals, though, which really need, they do send out to support labs like the Mayo Clinic or LabCorp or whatnot. But still, some of these like Great Plains and Genova and the like, they're, they do send the information off to your insurance company, and fingers crossed they'll cover some of it. So that's great. Is there any other key information that you want to give the listeners?
We've had many people with Lyme's disease and ciprofloxacin toxicity struggle for years and years with their ailments. But they come find our work and implement the diet and lifestyle program that we advocate, and they discover their energy improves, their mood improves, their quality of life improves. So for any of you who have a chronic infectious problem such as Lyme, or complications from the prolonged antibiotic use, please consider doing an experiment for yourself. Try following the Wahls protocol, working with your primary care doc. Give it a go for 100 days, very carefully, no cheating, and see what happens. And then report back. Tell us your experience.
That's awesome. That I guess you were put here for to reach out and to make a difference. And I have to commend you on being so strong and motivational. So thank you again. And thank you for coming on and talking to all my people.
Well, you're very welcome.
It's awesome. I hope to meet you real soon.
That sounds quite lovely.
Lovely. All right. For all you listeners, you have been listening to another episode of Living with Lyme. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Terry Wahls. Come back soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Living with Lyme. We'd like to take another moment to thank our sponsors. Botanical medicines are an important part of an integrative Lyme disease program. Biocidin from Biobotanical Research is a professional strength broad spectrum formula that has been extensively researched for effectiveness as a nutritional support in Lyme and co-infections. University studies have shown that this combination of plant medicines is also effective on biofilms that may be hampering treatment, as well as providing broadly acting herbal support. The liposomal form of biocidin, called biocidin LSF, is used by Lyme literate physicians such as Dr. Richard Horowitz and Dr. Jill Carnahan. Ask your practitioner about biocidin LSF and visit biocidin.com for more information. Master Supplements. Does living with Lyme ever get overwhelming and finding the right support seem difficult? Well, Master Supplements can help. Master Supplements specializes in probiotics, enzymes, and fiber that help support digestive and immune health during and after antibiotics. Master Supplements products provide results that you can feel working with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Their staff is available to help you decide which products and programs are right for you. Master Supplements is dedicated to science-based products with the highest standards of quality control. Visit master-supplements.com for more information or call and talk to a team member at 800-926-2961. That's master-supplements.com or 800-926-2961. Thanks so much again for listening to Living with Lyme. We'd like to remind you that if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. You can visit our website at livingwithlyme.us so you make sure you don't miss any episodes. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.